Penguin here. Glad to see so many new faces in the audience, but sadly, this video isn't for you. Yet. It isn't for you yet. If you haven't seen our Tears of the Kingdom video yet, you'll probably want to watch that, either first or maybe second if you want to help this video's retention rate. But the context for today's video is almost entirely in that one, so you'll absolutely want to watch it at some point. I'll leave a card for it here, but hey, feel free to stick around too. I'll also make sure to leave one of them in the end title cards. For those here who have seen that video, however, welcome to you as well. Gringo and I are indeed still quite proud of that video, but one of the main critiques that we've gotten on it, and one that I actually kind of agree with, is that we needed to do a little bit more for clarity's sake, and that visual aids would also help. So today's video will be aimed at clarifying some of the points with said charts, graphs, and other visual helps. Our hope is to be able to help people better understand and analyze time travel in fiction. So, seeing as it's been a few months, let's start with a recap of the necessary bits. The difficult portion, if I understood it properly, is in our discussion of time travel modes. We went over 3 modes of time travel in that video, and today we will explain each of them, go over diagnostic features, and make sure to do so as thoroughly as possible while still keeping it clear for our audience if we can manage to do that. Then we'll apply each method to Skyward Sword to see if that method of time travel fits the bill and explains the ending of the game well or not. If it doesn't, we will discuss why it doesn't, and how the game would look different if it did fit that mode of time travel better. So let's start with a rundown of time travel diagnostics. Assume for a second that you yourself are a time traveler. You have gone to the past and returned to the future, and you want to learn how your universe is affected by the time traveling. You know that there are 3 modes of time travel: causal, corrective, and branching. But you aren't sure which one applies to your universe or method of time travel, be it magic or science. What do you look at to determine how time travel works for you? Well, what you're really looking for here is cause and effect. Cause and effect essentially just describes how everything that happens is a cause and has associated consequences or effects. How cause and effect works in our day-to-day life is fairly obvious. You do a thing and it does a thing.
Well, duh.
But we don't know in real life whether or not time travel is even possible, much less how it is affected by, or how it itself affects, the laws of cause and effect. Though we do know that it likely operates in one of 3 different ways. In today's episode, we will explain the theorized possibilities for how it might work with a Punnett square-like diagram shown here. Along the top is our capital Y and capital N. Along the side is a lowercase y and a lowercase n. The top capital letters will represent whether or not a change has occurred in the past, or the cause, and the side with its lowercase letters will represent the present, or the effect. The Y in both cases will indicate that changes are present post-time traveling, and the N will represent a lack of those changes. Although it's going to look like a Punnett square, there are some notable differences, chief among which is that capital letters are not dominant. The 2 variables are independent of one another. Just think of it as Y is yes, N is no. Let's give it a look and see how it works. Say you are a time traveler and have gone back in time to plant a tree as a part of your experiment to find out how causality works. First, you look for a spot to plant a tree. You pick a spot that looks untouched and leave a camera. This will both be and record the initial state for all of our tests. Now that you've picked a spot, you travel to the past, plant the tree, and travel back to your present. You go back to the present and see that the seed that you've planted has now grown into a tree. You can see clearly that the present has changed because there's a tree here now when there wasn't a tree here before. You also know that the past has changed because you picked a very clear spot without a tree and planted a seed that grew just fine. So the seed must not have been planted in your original past, but now it has been planted by you in the past. You check the camera and see that the new tree is the same one that you planted. You planting the seed has changed the future and the past. That puts us in the square that says yes, yes. The past, or cause, has changed, and the present, or effect, has also changed. This square is the square for corrective time travel. It's a square where the past has changed and thus the future has changed to reflect that past. We actually have multiple perfect examples of this in Zelda, including the life tree in Skyward Sword. There's no tree at first, you plant the tree, and now there's a tree. Classic corrective, diagnosed by YY results in our tests. Now, is this what we see at the end of Skyward Sword? You'll probably be very tired of this answer by the end of the video, but the answer is yes and no. The Master Sword was placed in the pedestal in the past, and even though it wasn't there in the original past or present, it is here in the new past and present. This is clear corrective time shenanigans, where the cause and effect of our actions as a time traveler changes what the timeline looks like. Just going based on the Master Sword, the timeline does indeed look corrective, but there's a lot more evidence that shows it's really not. If Skyward Sword were corrective, the entire future would have changed, not just the Master Sword. In Skyward Sword, we didn't just plant a tree, we killed the Demon King. If this were a corrective timeline, it would look vastly different than what it does. Here's one possible example of what the game would look like if cause and effect worked fully correctively. The whole game would happen just the way it did until we traveled to the past at the end of the game. Then, when we sealed away Demise, it would change the past and the present in a few extremely notable ways. First, Demise would have been gone for thousands of years, so the timeline should clearly reflect that. This means that among other changes, Zelda never would have been taken by Girahim's tornado at the beginning of the game, the Headmaster wouldn't have sent Link to get her back, Impa wouldn't have tasked you with fighting the imprisoned, and most notably, you would have never brought the goddess statue to the ground to slay the imprisoned. It might still be on the surface, or it might still be in the sky, but in either case, it should be with Skyloft, as we never needed it to destroy the imprisoned in the sealing stone at the bottom of the pit. And that is the only possible reason for the goddess statue to be on the ground if Skyloft is still in the sky. Notably, this wouldn't have changed anything about how the present looks before you stop Demise, but it would change how all of these things look and act, or react to you in the final cutscene. For example, the Headmaster did send us to get Zelda, but only from our own perspective as time travelers. From his perspective, this never should have happened. But the game is careful to show us that he does remember sending us to get Zelda, and we can see that from how he's congratulating us and hugging Zelda like they've been separated for some time. We can also see that the goddess statue is on the ground, but we can surmise from the Headmaster and the others coming to meet you on the birds that they were clearly coming down from Skyloft. So Skyloft isn't on the ground, and the goddess statue is. These elements in the future are consistent with how the game looked before we time traveled, which means that as far as these elements are concerned, the future has not changed to reflect our actions in the past. Hey guys, let's take a little bit of a break, and don't skip this section. We're gonna talk about something new. This isn't about liking and subscribing, though you could do that if you want. This section is gonna be talking about one of YouTube's new features called the Hype button. The Hype button is a button specifically designed for channels with anywhere between 500 and 500,000 subscribers, which, if you'll look at that, oh, there we are on the bottom end. Oh no. But that's actually perfect. It presents us with a perfect opportunity to test out this new feature. I would like each and every single one of you that watches this and has like 2 seconds of time to go press that button right now. I'm hoping to see what kind of effect that will have on our channel as it grows. It could be that this is a really big chance for new channels like us to really rise up and get a new shot, but it might also amount to nothing, and your ability to put that forward and press that button will show us just how big or small of a focus this should be from our channel going forward. So thank you for those of you that press it, and for those of you that don't, why? Okay, so let's go to the next square. The next clearest square is the diagonal square, the no square. Imagine again we are time travelers planting a tree in the past. We pick a spot and bring a camera, but when we get to the clearing, there's already a camera there. There's no tree though, so we travel to the past. We plant the seed, see that the camera isn't here in the past, so we set it up and go back to the future. We get back to the future and we see that there still isn't a tree, so we check the camera. We see a video of us planting the seed, but at some point between then and now, a squirrel comes by and takes the seed. The tree not being here shows us that the past, or cause, hasn't changed, and the camera being here when we first got here, along with the footage of the squirrel, shows us that we also didn't change the future, or effect. Instead, we must have already traveled to the past by the time we decide to do it in the future. The effect still rationally follows the cause, but it isn't because we changed the past, it's because we caused the past to happen in the first place. This is a little bit difficult to imagine, so let's see how it looks on a timeline. First, the timeline starts, and then you arrive in the past, leave the camera, plant the tree, and head back to the future. This happens before you even decided to go back to the past in the first place from your perspective. But it is, after all, the past, and the past comes before the present. In other words, you can't change the past, the present, or the future if this is how time travel works. The past has already happened by the present and the future. So if you travel to the past from the present, that has already happened. The future you came from has already taken that into account. Now that that has happened, you head back to the present. The you of the present is unaware of what has happened and decides to do the experiment as the squirrel eats the seed. Then you go set up the experiment in the present, but because it was already set up in the past, it is already set up in the present. You go back and come back and see nothing has changed past or present. You are in a no-no timeline, also known as a causal loop. As I said in the last video, a good example of this is the Song of Storms paradox, but let's take a look at Skyward Sword through this lens. Evidence that supports this being a causal loop includes Impa's bracelet. Evidence that contradicts Skyward Sword being a causal loop is, and I'm not joking here, the entire rest of the game. If Skyward Sword were a causal loop, then we would have already sealed Demise in the Master Sword before the game even started. This means that he wouldn't be in the Sealing Stone. We wouldn't need to forge the Master Sword, as it would already be there in the Sealed Temple when the game started. We wouldn't need to get the Triforce to defeat the Imprisoned, and the Goddess statue would, once again, not be here on the ground unless it is accompanied by Skyloft to the ground after Demise was defeated. Also, if it did come down any time after Demise was sealed in the Master Sword, it should have been on the ground when the game started. Remember, in causal loops, the past has already taken place. We can't change it. Thus, the whole game should be taking time travel in the past era into account from the very start of the game. And that is very clearly not the case for most objects and characters in the game. It's just Impa and Zelda in the back room. That leaves us with two squares left. The yes-no square and the no-yes square. Imagine you go back to plant a tree, but when you get to the past, a police officer stops you from planting the tree or setting up the camera, so you just shrug and return to the present. You're surprised to see that there's a camera here and a tree. You check the camera to see what happened. No one came to plant a tree, the camera wasn't set up, and just one day there was suddenly a camera and a tree somehow. This is the no changes to the past, yes changes to the present square. We don't have a name for this because it isn't how physics work and therefore isn't a viable time travel method. It breaks the idea of cause and effect. Remember, all of these methods exist to explore cause and effect. If we change the past, we change the cause, and if the future changes, that's the effect. Yes, yes, and no, no time travel maintain causality perfectly. Every cause must have an effect, and every effect must have a cause. Yes, yes, and no, no both maintain a cause with its paired effect. It may break physics to time travel at all, but if it somehow doesn't, causality must still be maintained. So we can totally ignore this square. Especially since nothing like this happens in any time travel story I know of, least of all Skyward Sword. If you know of one, let me know, but I'm not really holding my breath here. That just leaves the yes-no square. One last time, let's imagine going to the past with camera and seed in hand. There was no camera in the future, so we put the camera up in the past and plant the tree with it, then head back to the future. When we get back, the camera and the tree still aren't there. That's a bit weird, so we pack up and go back to the past and plant another seed. Same results, but now there's two seeds in the past. Still no tree in the present though, so let's try something else. We go to the past, find a nearby tree that is still there in the present, and chop it down. Now we head back to the future, and the chopped tree still stands. Aha! That's it. We've changed the past, but the future didn't change with it. This is a very clear yes-no timeline, otherwise known as a branching timeline. If we change the past, or the cause, then the future, or the effect, must also change to reflect that. And because this is a real thing happening for you and your perspective, we know that it does. But if it does change, just like we see it should in the past, then why doesn't it change in the future? Well, the answer is that we now have two causes and two effects. Yes, yes, and no, no timelines have one changing or non-changing cause and effect, whereas branching timelines operate on the idea that going to the past doesn't change or ignore the cause, it adds a new cause and therefore also a new effect. If you go from timeline A to the past and make obvious changes to the past, then head back to the future and see timeline B, where the changes are present, it looks like a YY timeline. However, if you go from timeline A to the past, change it, and head back to the future, landing back on timeline A, it will look like YN. And this is an A timeline operating on the cause that you weren't there to change. The new timeline bases itself on your changes, whereas the old one ignores any changes you've made. This is what we see in Ocarina of Time. I'm not going to describe it all here, you guys know what it looks like at this point. Let's go to Skyward Sword and see if it's consistent there. We go through the whole game, reach the proposed splitting point, and change the past. We know that the past is changed because we know that in the past, Demise was in the Sealing Stone from this era all the way until our own time. When we return to the future, a few elements do change in the future and the past, a few didn't change in the past or the future, and many elements changed in the past but didn't change in the future. Okay, so if Skyward Sword had split the timeline, how would things look different? Well, Impa wouldn't have had the bracelet at the start of the game or the end. We would still have given it to her in the past, but she wouldn't have it in the A timeline, the one that we're on, so we wouldn't see it at the end of the game. The Master Sword also wouldn't be here at the end of the game, but the goddess statue would be, as we used it in this timeline to destroy the imprisoned. Skyloft would still be in the sky, which it is, and the headmaster would have sent us to get Zelda and would therefore congratulate us at the end of the game, which he does. The residents of Skyloft would still have big birds and not recognize small birds, which would not be the case on a causal loop or corrective timeline, but is the case at the end of the game. So clearly, a lot of these elements look exactly like a timeline split and not at all like a causal or corrective loop. But there are still elements here of a causal and corrective loop. So what's actually happening here? Is it causal, corrective, or branching? Well, it seems to be all of them to some extent. I know that that doesn't make sense, but it's the truth. It's disingenuous to look at any of these evidences and say that evidence is a mistake and shouldn't be in the game. The fact is, it is in the game. Impa has the bracelet, the Master Sword is in the pedestal now when it wasn't before, and the goddess statue was used to destroy the imprisoned in the Sealing Stone even though it shouldn't have been in the Master Sword in a causal or corrective timeline. All of this is on screen. It's not a mistake to notice that. Even if it was a mistake by the developers, it is all canon. So we don't have a YY timeline, an NN timeline, a YN timeline, or even an NY timeline. We have a YN timeline. And I know that doesn't make sense, but it's what we have, and there is no mistakes with these observations. So what does that even mean? Well, it means that rather than looking at the timeline through this broad, all-encompassing lens, we need to look at each entity in the timeline as though it has its own separated causality. Impa and the Sealed Zelda have a causal timeline NN loop. The Master Sword, Thunder Dragon, and Life Tree have a corrective YY timeline, and seemingly everything else has a branching YN timeline. Does that make sense? No, but it's magic. It doesn't have to always make perfect sense. That's why it's magic. I didn't write the story, guys. I'm just analyzing it. Whether you like it or not, this is how Skyward Sword ending is, and this is the picture that it paints. Do I personally think that Nintendo messed up by doing this? Actually, no, I don't. They wanted to have the big emotional moments that each of these time travel methods could deliver, and the story would be less impactful or mechanically interesting without them. Sure, they compromised some logic in an already confusing concept of time travel, but their story was better for it. So as a writer myself, I think they made the right call here. Can you imagine a Zelda timeline with no Master Sword at all? Or a Skyward Sword ending where the bracelet doesn't mean anything and the old lady just doesn't know what's going on at all because she's never seen it? Or heck, what if there was a Skyward Sword where you never had that emotional moment with Zelda in the back of that room? It would have lessened so much of the heart of this ending that, like, I don't know, guys. I think the compromise was worth making. But hey, that's just my opinion. A bad opinion. Thanks for watching. Okay, now that I'm done ripping off game theory, what does this actually mean for Skyward Sword? Well, it means that some elements are causal, some elements are corrective, and some elements are a timeline split. If you look at the vast majority of the evidence that we have, almost all of it points to a timeline split. The causal elements and corrective elements are absolutely 100% still there, I'm not arguing that. But that doesn't mean that you can just talk away or dismiss the idea that there's a timeline split here. Today's video isn't a theory, it is literally fact. It's an analysis. I'm not looking at this game and filling in gaps, I am literally just telling you this is what's here, it's what's in the game. You don't have to like that there's a timeline split here, and what happens on that timeline is absolutely up to interpretation. Nobody knows it, not me, and probably not even Nintendo. But the fact that there's a timeline split here isn't theory, it's canon. Intentionally or not. On a real note here though, big thanks for sticking with it to the end. I hope that this cleared up the whole time travel thing. I know it probably didn't for many of you, because either you already got it the first time or it still doesn't make this time around, and yeah, no, I apologize for that. This is one of the most convoluted concepts in fiction, and that's saying something, because fiction is literally bigger than everything humanity has ever learned about reality ever. If it doesn't make sense, it probably just won't, and hey, that sucks, sorry. But, you know, hey, I mean, at least it was entertaining, right? Like and subscribe. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed the video, but let me know what you thought either way. And really big thanks to our very first channel member, Berber0555. Super excited to add a new member to the flock, and hey, if you'd like to receive a shout out at the end of each of our videos, as well as a membership badge and some custom emojis, consider joining the program as well. It's $2.99 a month, and it really helps us to do this more often. But hey, whether you become a member, a subscriber, or just a continued casual viewer, I look forward to hearing from you. Until then though, this is Outcast Penguin, signing off.